Have you ever met someone who just learned something new and suddenly they think they're an expert? Maybe it's someone who watched a few YouTube videos about investing and now gives financial advice to everyone. Or someone who read one article about nutrition and suddenly knows more than doctors. Or maybe, if you're being honest, that person has been you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you start learning something is often the exact moment you become the most dangerous. Not because you know too much, but because you think you do. And that gap between what you know and what you think you know, that's where everything falls apart. Today, I want to show you something that might make you uncomfortable, a pattern that affects everyone, a trap that holds people back without them ever realizing it. Because the truth is, you're probably not as smart as you think you are. And that's not an insult. It's just how the human brain works. And once you understand this, everything changes. Let me tell you a story. January 6th, 1995, Pittsburgh, United States. Two men walk into a bank in broad daylight. No masks, no disguises. They're about to commit a robbery and they're completely confident they won't get caught. Why? Because they have a brilliant plan. They rubbed lemon juice all over their faces. Yes, lemon juice. You see, one of them had learned that lemon juice was once used as invisible ink. So he thought, if it makes writing invisible, maybe it makes faces invisible too. He even tested it with a Polaroid camera and couldn't see himself in the photo. The camera was probably broken, or maybe he pointed it the wrong way. But he didn't question it. He was too confident in his genius idea. They robbed the bank, and of course, they were arrested within hours. The security cameras captured everything perfectly. But here's what's fascinating. They weren't just stupid enough to try this plan. They were stupid enough to believe it would work. They couldn't see their own stupidity, and that caught the attention of a psychology professor named David Dunning. When Professor Dunning read about this robbery, he had a realization. When someone is ignorant, they're often ignorant about their own ignorance. They don't know what they don't know. So he invited his student, Dunning-Kruger, to study this phenomenon. And what they discovered changed how we understand human confidence. They ran a series of tests. They asked people to complete tasks in logic, grammar, and humor. Then they asked them to rate their own performance. And the results were striking. The people who performed the worst rated themselves the highest. They thought they did great. Meanwhile, the people who actually performed well underestimated themselves. They thought they could have done better. This became known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect, and here's how it works. When you don't know much about something, you lack the knowledge to recognize how much you don't know, so you feel confident. But when you actually start to learn, you begin to see how complex things really are, and that's when your confidence crashes. Let me show you what this looks like. Imagine you know nothing about a subject. Your confidence is low because you're aware you don't know anything. That makes sense. But then you learn something. Maybe you watch a video, read an article, take a beginner course, and suddenly your confidence skyrockets. This is called the peak of Mount Stupid. You've learned just enough to feel like you understand everything, but you haven't learned enough to realize how much you're missing. And this is the most dangerous point, because now you're confident enough to make decisions, give advice, and argue with people, but you don't have the knowledge to back it up. Think about it. How many people do you know who just started investing and suddenly think they're Warren Buffett? Or someone who reads one book about psychology and starts diagnosing everyone around them? Or worse, someone who watches a few videos and thinks they know more than doctors, scientists, or experts who've spent decades studying. They're all living on Mount Stupid. And the problem is they don't know it, because if they knew it, they wouldn't be there anymore. But here's what happens if you keep learning. Eventually, you start to realize things are more complicated than you thought. You discover nuances, exceptions, contradictions, and your confidence doesn't just drop, it collapses. Welcome to the Valley of Despair. This is where you feel like you know nothing, where you question if you're even capable of learning this subject, where you look at experts and think, I'll never get there. And this is where most people quit. They give up on learning the language. They abandon the new skill. They go back to what feels comfortable. Because this phase is painful. It's the moment you realize how much you don't know. It's when you become aware of your own ignorance. And that hurts. But here's the truth. This actually is progress. Feeling stupid isn't a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're learning, because now you're aware of what you don't know, and that awareness is the first step towards real understanding. If you push through the valley, something changes. Slowly, your confidence starts to grow again, but this time it's different. It's not the explosive, baseless confidence of Mount Stupid. It's steady, grounded, real. Your knowledge increases and your confidence increases with it, proportionally, naturally. You're not pretending anymore. You're not faking it. You actually know what you're talking about. And the best part, you also know what you don't know. This is where experts live, not on Mount Stupid, yelling about how smart they are, but here, in this quiet place where knowledge and humility walk side by side. They know a lot, but they also know how much they still don't know, and that keeps them learning. So why does this matter? Because the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just something that happens to other people. It happens to you, to me, to everyone. We're all living on some version of Mount Stupid in some area of our lives. Maybe you're great at your job, but Mount Stupid about politics. Or you're knowledgeable about fitness, but clueless about investing. Or you're wise in relationships, but ignorant about technology. The point is, we all have blind spots, and the first step to getting better is admitting they exist. And here's the dangerous part. When you're on Mount Stupid, you don't just hurt yourself, you hurt others. You give bad advice. You make poor decisions that affect people around you. You spread misinformation with confidence. And because you sound so sure of yourself, people believe you. But here's the other side to this. When you become truly knowledgeable about something, you face a different problem. You forget what it's like to not know. Things that seem obvious to you are completely foreign to beginners, and you struggle to explain basic concepts because they're so natural to you now. This is called the curse of knowledge. The more you know, the harder it becomes to remember what it was like to be a beginner. And this is why experts sometimes make terrible teachers. They skip steps. They assume too much. They can't break things down because everything is already broken down in their minds. So if you're an expert at something, remember this. Your knowledge is a gift, but it's only valuable if you can share it. And to share it, you need to remember the valley you walked through, the confusion you felt, the questions you had. That's what makes a great teacher, not just knowing the answer, but remembering what it's like to not know. Now let's talk about the other trap. The valley of despair isn't just where people quit, it's also where impostor syndrome lives. This is when you feel like you're not good enough, like everyone else knows more than you, like you're faking it and soon everyone will find out. And here's what's wild. Imposter syndrome often hits the people who actually know what they're doing. Because the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know, so you underestimate yourself. Meanwhile, people on Mount Stupid have no idea what they're missing, so they overestimate themselves. So if you've ever felt like an imposter, here's what you need to know. That feeling isn't proof you're not good enough. It's proof you're aware of the complexity of what you're doing. And that awareness is actually a sign of competence, not incompetence. The people who never feel like imposters, they're usually the ones who should, because they're too ignorant to realize what they don't know. So how do you escape this? How do you avoid living on Mount Stupid without getting stuck in the valley of despair? Here's the secret. You have to actively seek out what you don't know. Ask questions, real questions, not to look smart, but to actually learn. Admit when you don't understand something. Read books that challenge your views. Talk to people who know more than you. Test your own ideas. Look for holes in your own logic. Because here's the truth. The fastest way to get smarter is to admit you're not as smart as you think you are. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And the people who do this, they're the ones who actually grow. They move through the valley faster because they're not running from it. They're walking through it with purpose. There's a famous phrase often attributed to Socrates, "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." And whether he actually said it or not, the idea is powerful because the moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop learning. And the world is far too complex for anyone to fully understand. There's a concept called Polanyi's paradox that says we know more than we can tell. There are things you understand intuitively that you can't explain, skills you have that you can't teach, knowledge you possess that exists beyond words. This is why even experts struggle to explain exactly what they do. A master musician can't fully describe why they chose one note over another. A great writer can't always explain why one word feels right. A skilled surgeon knows what to do in the moment, but can't always teach it perfectly. So if you can't explain everything you know, that's okay. You're human. And if someone asks you a question and you say, "I don't know," that's not failure. That's honesty. And honesty is the foundation of real learning. So here's what you need to remember. You're probably not as smart as you think you are. And that's okay, because the goal isn't to be right all the time. The goal is to keep learning.
Mount Stupid is easy to climb, but it's a dead end. The Valley of Despair is painful to walk through, but it's the path to real knowledge. And the plateau of sustainability, that's where you want to be. Not because you know everything, but because you know enough and you're humble enough to keep learning. So the next time you feel confident about something, pause. Ask yourself, am I actually knowledgeable, or am I just standing on Mount Stupid? And if you feel like you don't know anything, pause again. Ask yourself, am I actually incompetent, or am I just aware of the complexity? Because awareness is the first step. And the journey from ignorance to wisdom isn't a straight line. It's a curve, and everyone has to walk it. If this video made you think twice about what you think you know, that's good. That means you're paying attention, because the difference between people who stay stuck and people who grow isn't intelligence. It's honesty. The willingness to admit, I don't know as much as I thought, and now I'm ready to learn.